Last week, we got round to weaning the last of our calves. And if I do say so myself, they didn't look too shabby. But this week, my whole world got turned upside down. For reasons I'm about to share with you. Brutal honesty now. This week's video is probably going to be a lot shorter than normal and might not be as good a quality, but I will tell you exactly why, because life has turned upside down at the minute. Those of you who follow me will know that about 4 weeks ago, I had a little girl. She is amazing, little Florence, but she's got a bit ill at the minute, so she has had to go to hospital. She's been in there for best part of a week now. We're not actually 100% sure what is wrong with her, but they are treating her for viral meningitis, which we're very hopeful it's not that, but we're waiting for test results to come back. That's probably a text message now. We're waiting for some test results to come back so that we can rule that out, but they have to just treat her for that in the meantime, because we just don't know. But it's been a worry, and I'm running around like a blue-ass fly, trying to keep everyone going, keeping farm going, keeping little one, Wilfred, running around to nursery and making sure he's all right, and it's just nuts. It's absolutely crazy. But with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go and show you how we're going to feed the cows, what we're feeding them, and why. We've bought the tub mixer a few weeks ago, so I'm just going to, whilst I'm mixing, because one thing I am doing is feeding cows, so we're going to go and talk through it, what we're doing, what the ration is, how we're feeding it, because we're doing things very different to normal. So obviously, as most people know, this is the first time we've done a TMR for years. Normally we just feed silage down a trough with a straw shredder, and then we top dress it with some cereal out of the Emily bucket. But because of the drought and we don't have the silage stocks, we're having to feed a lot more straw and feed a lot of other bits and pieces in order to get ourselves through. It's effectively a juggling act, and with that we've then had to buy a tub mixer to incorporate it to get the best results. And we bought a second-hand tub mixer about a month or so ago, and we've been using it ever since. And to be quite honest, I am fairly impressed with how simple it's made feeding cattle for us this year. I'm not saying it's simpler than normal, I don't think it is. It takes a little bit more time, but it is meaning that we can just do one mix that does everything, and life is actually not too chaotic, which actually is quite helpful at the moment. So I've printed off these little sheets, and this side is the full mix, so that's the mix that goes into the feeder wagon itself, and on this side is the premix. So we have a mix that we put into the Emily bucket of cereal, rape meal, and minerals and such like, which I'll show you in a minute when we're done, and then we put that premix into the actual mixer itself. So it just saves running around with a lot of stuff, because we're still using the Emily bucket to feed some fat stock that were on that system beforehand, and I didn't want to change the diet because they're nearly finished. One thing I will say, we are having to do more than one mix a day. We're doing not 2 mixes a day, it's like a mix and a third is about what we want. So every other day or so we have to do 2 mixes, and then in between time we have enough spare that we don't have to do it. But I might do a couple of mixes today because Dad's going away and I need to catch up with myself. We're parking them inside, so they're under here where the straw is, and the mixer's in front of the shredder. Normally be the other way around, but I put me in wrong yesterday. Typical. I honestly want to say about how that was professionally reversed, but we've actually put a camera on the back because I can't see, and I guarantee I'll back it into something. I don't want to bend the steps because whoever looked after it before us, before we bought it, my God, it's in absolute mint condition, and I don't want to bend it. I don't want to be the guy that breaks the thing. So camera it was. It's good though. Look at that. See everything. I have got a little bit left in here, which I'm going to spew out. I'll explain why when we get round to it, but I want to do a full mix and I need it empty before we start. Right, so main things going in. Silage. This is a herbal lay silage. It's actually really good. The ration that we put together is based on an average silage because we haven't got the results for this stuff yet. But this stuff is way better than average silage. You just know by smelling it, looking at it,
whatever, it's just better. So we're putting in a bit more straw than we would normally do if it was an average silage, because we need to just balance it that a bit more. But we'll talk about that afterwards. Look, just come check this stuff out. You see this? It's a nice silage. It's just a nice moisture. I would say it's probably about 35% dry matter, maybe 32. It's got a lot of the clover and that in there. You can see it just on the edge. Then we're putting in the straw. This is just some wheat straw that we've got, but it's a really flaky stuff this year. If you watch when I unwrap this, it'll just fall apart. It's mad. I'm actually kind of looking forward to the stack getting a bit of weather on it, and then the bales should hold together, because at the minute when we're filling up the straw shredder, we fill it up just here, because the amount of stuff that you lose, we can then just push it into a pile and use it in the feeder wagon. Okay, he says, look, every other bale I've took apart this year has just fell apart when the net rack comes off. That one's perfect. Okay, well, eat your words, James. Whatever. On here I've got ×1 and ×2. So, no, that's not true. I've got ×1 and ×1.5. So I can't get a double mix in the mixer. I probably could, but I don't think it's gonna mix very well. So I tend to do a 1.5 mix. And a 1.5 mix means I need about 100 kilos of straw with a basic silage, but that silage will be bulkier and drier. So what I'm doing is I'm actually putting in about 200 kilos with this stuff, because I'm trying to take away some of that moisture. Moisture's not a bad thing, but it's probably just a bit much. So if we can put a bit of extra straw in, it's just gonna bulk it up, and then we'll make that silage go a little bit further, because I just can't afford to just throw silage in willy-nilly at the minute. Right, so that's the straw in first. That's pretty light, so we want to put something heavier on top, so I'm gonna add the silage in on top of that. Again, 477 kilos of silage is what we need. I think these bales are a bit more than that, but it won't hurt. As I said before, we're putting out a bit more straw, so a bit more silage isn't going to be the end of the world. And when you're doing bales as well, it's not quite so easy as a clamp to put in the right amount. So I'm trying to get the quantities to just be a multiple of, rather than, you know, necessarily 100%. As long as they're there or thereabouts, the mix is actually bloody lovely and the cows are eating it. If you look here, we've been adding a little bit of water into this mix, but because the silage is that little bit wetter and we've put a bit more straw in, what I've been thinking about doing is, because the silage is heavier than the basic silage, I then discount the extra weight off the water, because there's probably water that's making the silage heavier. So I'm just like, do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to like math it out in my head. So those bales are about 100 kilos more than what we need silage wise, so therefore I'll take 100 kilos off the water. I'm not sure if that's exact science, but it kind of makes sense in my head. These fold-up steps are like one of my favorite things about this machine. I think they're brilliant. I mean, I'll probably still go back into something, that's why we've got the camera, but the fact that they just up there, lovely. I've just walked up the steps too. Here's the camera, look. We just put the camera on the back there, put a bracket on. Dad made the bracket, so it just looks out behind, and it's got those little markers on there as well, so you know what you're doing. Anyway, this is mixing, so it needs a bit of time just to incorporate, chop the straw and mix this together, but we're going to put the water in whilst it's doing it, because the water's really just to dampen that up. I've just come down because the wind's blown all that water straight in my face. In an ideal world, I'd actually fill up on that side, but because these bales are here, and we didn't think we'd actually be buying this thing when we put them there, you know, I'd put it over there. And somehow it feels more natural filling up that side than this side, but once they're gone, we'll probably move sides. I'm wanting this to get up to about 1 ton before I turn that water off. And as you can see, it's just an IBC filled with water, but what we've been doing is we've been filling it with a hose pipe in the top. We're actually going to drill a ball cock into the top of the barrel, so we can just clip the hose pipe on and leave it running, and it'll just fill itself up and turn itself off when it's ready. That way around, then we won't have to stress about whether it's running over or whatever else. We can just clip it up, go off doing whatever we want to do. When we come back for a coffee or lunch or whatever, we can turn it off and it'll be full. Oh, we're about there. Let's go and turn it off. This too. If you're wondering how I'm turning it on and off, I broke the fork, the little 4-time fork. So I've kept the handle so I can reach. It's very useful, and it fits in that little hole there on the step. It's like it's made for the job. Rightio, so, I ran off over the pallet tines, I didn't mean to do that, put them back. Okay, onto the premix. So in the Emily bucket, we've got a mixture of wheat, rape meal, minerals, a little bit of bicarb, and it's all mixed together nicely. I'll show you what we put in there later on because I'll have to fill the bucket up, but that's mixed together nicely, and we just lift that over and run it in to add it into the mix, and then she's all ready to be fed out. Well, as long as she's incorporated, all right. So this is what's in here. You can see it, look, there's rape meal, rolled barley, no, rolled wheat. It could be barley, but we're using wheat, so that's what we got. And it's all there lovely, ready to be put in. Right, it's all in. Let's go and have a look, see if she's incorporated. Oh yeah, look at that. Lovely stuff, she's about ready to go. To be fair, these bales, these silage bales being a bit wetter, are incorporating a lot quicker. The drier stuff, you do have to leave it a bit longer to sort of mix in. I don't know if I mentioned this already yet, I'm not sure, but someone mentioned in the comments about running it in 540 economy PTO rather than the standard 540 because it just runs at a lower rev rate then. And to be honest, with a tractor like this on the front, we don't need to worry about power. So we've currently got about 200 head of cattle there or thereabouts inside at the moment, all young stock, none of them are suckler cows. So we've got some weaned calves that are 5.5 to 7 months old. We've got some finishing cattle that are 17-ish months old as well. There's a few cull cows and everything as well mixed in with those. And they're all on the same ration. So we put this ration together so we can just feed one thing and not have to worry about doing a ration for this and a ration for that and spending all day mixing and feeding and doing whatever. Anyway, here's the Charolais. They were the last to come in and they are just about onto this ration now. The first couple of days they weren't so keen, but they're smashing it. Okay, let's have a chat about what's in the premix. So, let me put my lights on. There we go, it's a bit better. I take some rolled wheat and I just add that into the Emily bucket, and then we get some rape meal at the grain store and we stick that in. With the rape meal we also put in the minerals and the bicarbonate of soda as well. Although to be fair, with the amount of straw that we're putting in, we probably don't really need the bicarb. We can probably get away with taking that out if I'm honest. The straw will do the same thing as the bicarb will do, but it is just a precaution. I do need to do a bit of extra milling when I get 5 minutes because as always I'm running out. So as you can see here, let me grab it. This is what we've got in the premix. We've got some rolled wheat, we've got rape meal, we've got minerals, we've got bicarb, and then it's either one mix worth or 2 mixes worth. We can generally get 2 mixes worth in the bucket. So we just scooped ourselves up some rape meal and I weighed it on the weigher. So I know how much I've got and now just need to add in the minerals and the bicarb. So that Emily bucket takes about 30 seconds and then that's the whole premix just done. And all we have to do then is just put it in over the top and we can feed it. And as I said, there's some fat cattle that were on a top dress diet that are just having silage in the ring feeder and then having a cereal down the trough. And we're using the same mix. So we can use the same mix for the top dressing of any silage. We can use the same mix for growers and for finishers. It's making life really simple. Anyway, everything's fed, nothing's dead. Onwards and upwards. So that's cattle all fed that I can feed with the trough. Let's go with Dusty. That's it. So I'll park that there. I will do another mix in a minute, but you remember I spewed this out on the floor before we started. This was some that was left in. And the reason why I've done this is because we have a couple of yards that we can't feed very well with the feeder. We will be able to, but we've got a few alterations to do to those yards. So at the moment, I can't. What we've been doing is this shed that's just here, where we've got the straw, has some troughs that go along the front and then they go all the way up there, sort of up the side where we park the feeders. So Those troughs obviously not in use at the minute, they're actually over there just sort of parked up ready for the shed to come empty. So what we've done is we've actually put them in the doorways of a couple of the yards because they're 15 foot, we've got 15-foot doorways. We've strapped them into the doorways and then we actually use them as bunkers and we're feeding and actually getting on quite well with it, to the point where I'm thinking that some of those yards that we can't use very well, we can't use the troughs to feed, would actually be really good if we got some bunkers and just stuck them in the doorways. And there's a guy called Hal Cooper who has a fabricating business not far from us, and he makes bunkers. There's the Walter Watson bunkers, there's the Porter-Quip bunkers, there's quite a few different options, and actually they're going to be really quite good. So this stuff, we're going to come along with a bucket, we'll scoop it up and I'll drop it in the bunkers for those guys to eat. But if you look at this, this is, I mean, you can see the clover in there, you can see the cereal, you can see the straw, you can see the silage. It smells absolutely, to be honest, even I would eat this. Eat it! Who said that? All right, I'll give it a go. I bet it worse. Actually quite nice. As fat as a butcher's pig, I've ate that stuff all day. You can tell why the dog's put on some weight. That's good, that. I know there'll be a few people wondering why we're putting wheat in rather than barley, but well, it's two reasons really. Firstly, we buy our cereal from next door, now we don't have any arable, and they only had wheat here, so that made a lot of sense, just put the wheat in the shed. And then secondly, wheat is actually a really good feed. It's better quality feed than barley is, and with the wheat price being low in comparison to the barley price, it actually doesn't work out too dissimilar to each other if you were to feed it, so it's not a big deal. If wheat was 220 or 230 a ton and barley was at 160 like it often is, then you would prefer to put barley in, but it's quite close at the moment, so it doesn't really matter, and it's much higher energy and it's quite good for the young stock, it's quite good for this finishing stock as well, and they like it and it rolls well. I actually prefer feeding it than barley. I get really itchy. Barley just affects me a lot. It makes me all rashy and horrible. So whilst the wheat price is a bit lower, I'd rather pay the bit more money and feed that.
So as you can imagine, this week has been incredibly difficult for all of us. But Florence is a fighter, and hopefully her and her mum will be back home with us in no time. But until then, and for another week, it's Baldy's Farm over and out.